The telegram crumpled in Zara Everly's gloved hand as the stagecoach lurched to a halt, and she realized with a sinking heart that nothing about the weathered ranch before her matched the description her intended husband had written. It was May of 1876, and the Wyoming territory stretched endlessly in every direction, golden prairie grass bending beneath a relentless wind that carried the scent of sage and distant rain. Zara had traveled 3 weeks from Boston, her entire life packed into 2 leather trunks strapped to the back of this dust-covered coach. She had come west to marry Samuel Hardwick, a rancher she had corresponded with for 8 months, whose letters promised security, respectability, and a fresh start far from the scandal that had driven her from Massachusetts. But this was not the Hardwick ranch. The driver, a grizzled man named Pete who had spoken perhaps 20 words the entire journey, climbed down and began untying her luggage. "This here's the place, miss. Address says Hardwick Ranch, Route 2, Unionville. But Mr. Pete, this cannot be correct." Zara stepped down carefully, her traveling dress already coated with trail dust. Mr. Hardwick described a white house with green shutters. "This building is clearly constructed of logs, and there are no shutters whatsoever." Pete squinted at the telegram again, then at the hand-carved sign hanging crookedly from a post near the gate. "Nelson Ranch." "Well, I'll be," he muttered. "Looks like there was some confusion with the routes. Hardwick Ranch is probably on Route 12, not Route 2. Easy mistake." "Easy mistake." Zara's voice rose despite her attempt at composure. "Sir, you have delivered me to entirely the wrong location. You must take me to the correct ranch immediately." Pete's weathered face crinkled with something resembling sympathy. "Can't do that, miss. Horses are spent and I got a schedule to keep. Due in Cheyenne by tomorrow night. I am already behind. You cannot simply abandon me here. Folks who live here will sort you out, probably give you directions, maybe a fresh horse." He deposited her trunks in the dirt with 2 heavy thuds. "Sorry for the mix-up, miss." Before Zara could protest further, Pete had climbed back onto the coach and urged the exhausted horses forward. She watched in disbelief as the stagecoach disappeared into the vast landscape, leaving her utterly alone with 2 trunks and a crumpled telegram in a place she absolutely did not belong. The ranch before her was modest but well-maintained. The log house sat sturdy against the endless sky, smoke curling from its stone chimney. A barn stood to the left, painted red but fading, and several corrals held horses that watched her with mild curiosity. The mountains rose in the distance, still capped with snow despite the spring warmth settling over the valleys. Zara had just gathered the courage to approach the house when she heard hoofbeats. A rider appeared from behind the barn, moving at an easy canter. He sat tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low against the afternoon sun, and as he drew closer, Zara could see he was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed cutting. He reined his horse to a stop a respectful distance away, and Zara found herself looking up into the most striking pair of gray eyes she had ever seen. They were the color of storm clouds, intelligent and assessing, set in a face that was handsome in a rugged, unpolished way. "Madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat. His voice was deep and carried the slow cadence of someone who chose his words carefully. "I am Nathan Zimmerman. This is my ranch. I do not believe we have met." "No, sir, we have not." Zara straightened her spine, determined to maintain her dignity despite the absurdity of her situation. "My name is Zara Everly. I have been delivered here by mistake. The stagecoach driver confused Route 2 with Route 12. I am meant to be at the Hardwick Ranch." Nathan dismounted in one fluid motion, looping his reins over a fence post. Up close, he was taller than she had initially thought, easily over 6 feet with broad shoulders and the lean, muscular build of a man who worked hard every day of his life. The Hardwick Ranch. That would be Samuel Hardwick's place. Yes, precisely. Do you know the location? Something flickered across Nathan's face, an expression Zara could not quite read. I know it. It is about 15 miles northeast of here, up past Willow Creek. 15 miles. Zara's heart sank further. I see. Would it be possible to hire transportation? I have some money, and I am certain Mr. Hardwick would compensate you for the trouble once I arrive. Nathan studied her for a long moment, and Zara felt oddly exposed under that gray-eyed gaze. He seemed to be weighing something, considering words he had not yet spoken. Finally, he said, "Miss Everly, are you traveling to the Hardwick Ranch to become Samuel Hardwick's wife?" Heat rushed to Zara's cheeks. "That is a rather personal question, Mr. Zimmerman." "It is a yes or no question, madam, and before you get angry at my boldness, you should know that the answer matters significantly to what I am about to tell you." Something in his tone made her anxiety spike. "Yes," she admitted. "We have been corresponding for several months." The arrangement was made through a reputable agency in Boston. I am to be his bride. Nathan removed his hat and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed to indicate discomfort or frustration. "Miss Everly, I am afraid I have some difficult news. Samuel Hardwick was killed 3 weeks ago. A horse threw him. His neck broke in the fall. He was buried in the cemetery at Unionville Presbyterian Church." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Zara heard the words, understood their meaning, but could not quite reconcile them with the reality she had built in her mind during 3 weeks of travel. Samuel Hardwick was dead. The man she had come to marry, the future she had planned, the security she desperately needed, all of it gone in a single sentence. "Miss Everly." Nathan's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Miss Everly, you should sit down." Her knees had indeed gone weak, but she fought against the swoon that threatened. Ladies from good Boston families did not faint in the dirt like heroines from dime novels. "I am quite all right," she managed, though her voice sounded thin even to her own ears. "You are not all right. You are pale as fresh milk." Nathan took her elbow gently and guided her to a bench near the house. "Sit here. I will get you some water." He disappeared inside, and Zara sat rigidly on the bench, her mind racing. Dead. Samuel Hardwick was dead, and she was stranded in the Wyoming territory with almost no money, no family, and no prospects. The scandal in Boston made returning impossible. Her father had made that abundantly clear in his final letter. "You have brought shame upon this family, Zara. Do not expect to find welcome here ever again." The scandal had not even been her fault. Her former fiancé, Tobias, had been caught embezzling from his father's shipping company. When the authorities investigated, they discovered he had been using Zara's name to cover some of his transactions, forging her signature on documents. Though she had been cleared of legal wrongdoing, the social damage was complete. No respectable family would associate with her. No decent man would court her. The mail-order bride agency had been her only option, and even they had required extensive character references before agreeing to help. Nathan returned with a tin cup of water. "Drink this." She obeyed, grateful for something to do with her trembling hands. The water was cold and sweet, probably from a deep well. When she had finished, Nathan settled onto the bench beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "I am sorry to deliver such news," he said quietly. "Especially after you have traveled so far. Was he a good man?" The question surprised her even as she asked it. "Samuel Hardwick, I mean. Was he kind?" Nathan considered this. He was fair in his business dealings, paid his debts on time, kept to himself mostly. He paused, then added, "But no, Miss Everly, I would not have called him kind. He was hard the way this land makes some men hard. I hope that is not too blunt. Under the circumstances, I appreciate honesty." Zara looked down at the cup in her hands. "I find myself in rather desperate straits, Mr. Zimmerman. I cannot return to Boston. I have no family out here and my funds are extremely limited. I do not suppose Unionville has much use for a woman whose skills include embroidery, passable French, and an extensive knowledge of English literature." She had meant it as a bitter joke, but Nathan did not laugh. Instead, he was quiet for so long that she finally looked up at him. He was staring out at the horizon, his profile sharp against the afternoon light, clearly wrestling with some internal debate. When he finally spoke, his words shocked her completely. "Stay here instead. I beg your pardon." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "Stay here, at the Nelson Ranch. I am not proposing marriage, understand. I am not that sort of man, and this is not that sort of proposition. But I do have need of help, and you do need a place to stay. It seems to me we might be able to help each other. Mr. Zimmerman, I could not possibly hear me out before you refuse." He leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. "My mother passed 2 years ago, cancer. Since then, I have been running this ranch alone, and I am not managing well. The house is a disaster. My clothes are all mended with the clumsiest stitches you have ever seen. I eat beans and bacon for nearly every meal because that is all I know how to cook. I need help, Miss Everly, and I am willing to pay for it. You want to hire me as a housekeeper. I want to offer you employment, yes. Room and board plus wages. Nothing inappropriate, I swear to you. You would have your own room with a lock on the door. I would expect you to maintain your reputation and mine." He met her eyes steadily. "I know this is not what you planned. I know it is probably not what you want. But it is an option, and out here, options can be scarce." Zara's mind whirled. The proposal was highly irregular, potentially scandalous if word spread. But what choice did she have? She could go to Unionville proper, but then what? Hope for charity from strangers. Try to find work in a rough town where single women were rare and often assumed to be of questionable character. At least Nathan Zimmerman seemed decent. At least here she would have shelter and honest work. "What about your reputation?" she asked. "Surely having an unmarried woman living in your home would cause talk." "It will cause talk," Nathan acknowledged. "But I care less about gossip than I do about practical solutions to problems. Anyone who knows me will know I would not dishonor a woman under my roof. Those who do not know me can think what they like." It was a remarkably pragmatic view, especially for the time. Zara found herself appreciating his straightforwardness even as she wrestled with the decision before her. "May I think about it?" she asked finally. "Of course. But night is coming on, and either way, you will need somewhere to sleep tonight. Why do not you come inside, let me show you the house, and you can decide in the morning. If you want to go to Unionville instead, I will take you there myself tomorrow." It was fair, more than fair. Zara nodded slowly. "Very well. Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Nathan," he corrected. "If you are going to be working for me, we might as well dispense with formalities. Nathan, then, and you may call me Zara." He smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his serious face into something warmer. "Zara, that is a pretty name. Unusual. It was my grandmother's name." "She was from Italy." Nathan stood and offered his hand to help her up. His palm was calloused, his grip strong but careful. "Let me get your trunks. Then I will show you inside and you can see what you are considering taking on." The interior of the ranch house was indeed a disaster, though not beyond redemption. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. Dishes were piled in a dry sink, and dust covered every surface. A pair of muddy boots sat in the middle of the floor, and the table was cluttered with what appeared to be ranch ledgers and correspondence. "Fair warning," Nathan said, watching her take it all in. "It gets worse in the kitchen area." He was not exaggerating. The kitchen corner was a bachelor's nightmare, pots with food crusted inside them, a stove that clearly had not been properly cleaned in months, and provisions stored with no organization whatsoever. But Zara had grown up in a large household and had learned domestic skills from an early age. She could see the potential beneath the mess. The house itself was solid, well built with good bones. It simply needed care and attention. Nathan showed her the 2 bedrooms. The larger one was clearly his, spartanly furnished with a bed, wardrobe, and washstand. The smaller had likely been his mother's. It contained a narrow bed, a dresser with a mirror, and a rocking chair by the window. Dust covered everything, but the room had good light and a view of the mountains. "The door has a lock," Nathan pointed out, demonstrating the sturdy bolt. "And I give you my word, Zara, you will be safe here. I lost my father when I was 12 and my mother 2 years back. I was raised to respect women and their boundaries." There was such earnestness in his voice that Zara felt something in her chest loosen. She had been so afraid for so long, afraid of the scandal, afraid of the journey west, afraid of marrying a stranger. But standing in this dusty room, looking at Nathan's honest face, she felt the fear ease just slightly. "I believe you," she said quietly. Relief flooded his features. "Does that mean you will stay? At least for a while?" Zara looked around the small room again. Through the window, she could see the sun beginning its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The land here was vast and wild, nothing like the ordered streets and gardens of Boston. But there was a beauty to it, a raw honesty that appealed to something deep inside her. "Yes," she said finally, "I will stay. I will work as your housekeeper, and we will maintain strict propriety. If either of us becomes uncomfortable with the arrangement, we will discuss it honestly. Does that seem fair?" Nathan's smile was genuine and warm. "More than fair. Thank you, Zara. You may be saving my life. I think I was about 2 weeks away from dying of my own terrible cooking." Despite everything, the shock, the disappointment, the uncertainty, Zara found herself smiling back. "Then I suppose we should start with preparing a decent supper." "About that," Nathan said sheepishly. "I have bacon, beans, some potatoes that are still probably good, and flour. Also coffee." "Lots of coffee. That will do for tonight. Tomorrow I will need to make a proper inventory and plan accordingly." Zara removed her traveling jacket and began rolling up her sleeves. "Do you have an apron I could borrow? There are some of my mother's things in the chest in your room. Help yourself to whatever you need." As Zara dug through the chest, finding not only aprons but several simple dresses that looked like they might fit with minor alterations, Nathan brought her trunks inside and set them in her room. She changed out of her traveling dress into one of the simpler house dresses she had packed, then tied on one of Mrs. Zimmerman's aprons. When she emerged, Nathan had cleared the table and was attempting to wash some of the dishes. He looked comically out of place, his large hands struggling with the delicate process. "Let me," Zara said gently. "You can bring in more water from the well." They worked in companionable silence as the evening settled around the ranch. Zara heated water, washed dishes, and assessed what she had to work with. Nathan brought water, started a fire in the stove, and stayed out of her way with the wisdom of a man who recognized his limitations. By the time full dark had fallen, Zara had managed to produce a simple but decent meal: fried potatoes with bacon, beans cooked with a bit of molasses she found in the pantry, and biscuits that were perhaps not as light as she would have liked but were certainly edible. They sat across from each other at the now clean table, and Nathan said a simple grace before they ate. The meal was quiet, both of them exhausted from the day's events, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. "This is the best food I've had in 2 years," Nathan said finally, sopping up the last of his beans with a biscuit. "I mean that sincerely. I am glad you enjoyed it, though I assure you, with proper supplies I can do much better. I will take you to Unionville the day after tomorrow for provisions. We can go to the general store and you can get whatever you need. Within reason," he added with a slight smile. "The ranch does well enough, but we are not wealthy." "I understand. I am accustomed to working with what is available." After supper, Nathan excused himself to check on the horses while Zara finished cleaning the kitchen. When he returned, she had already retired to her room, the door firmly closed. Nathan lay in his own bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake or the best decision of his life. He had not told Zara the whole truth about Samuel Hardwick. Yes, the man had been hard and not particularly kind. But he had also been known for his temper and his rough treatment of animals and ranch hands alike. When Nathan had seen Zara standing in his yard, so clearly out of place in her fine traveling clothes, and realized she was meant for Hardwick, his first thought had been relief that she would never have to endure that marriage. His second thought had been the impulsive offer that now left him with a beautiful, educated woman sleeping in his mother's room. Nathan had not courted anyone since his mother's death. There had been no time, and honestly, most of the available women in Unionville did not interest him. They were nice enough, but Nathan had always been drawn to intelligence and spirit, qualities that seemed in short supply among the ranchers' daughters and shopkeepers' nieces, who occasionally gave him hopeful looks at church socials. Zara Everly was different. He had seen that immediately in the way she held herself, the vocabulary she used, the quick intelligence in her dark eyes. She was educated, refined, probably too refined for life on a rough Wyoming ranch. But she had also rolled up her sleeves without complaint and produced a decent meal in a kitchen that would have sent most ladies fleeing in horror. He would have to be careful, very careful. Because Nathan Zimmerman was not the sort of man who took advantage of vulnerable women, and Zara was undoubtedly vulnerable right now, even if she hid it well behind that proper Boston composure. In the other room, Zara lay in the narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Wyoming night. Coyotes called in the distance. The wind rattled the window panes. The house creaked and settled around her. She thought about Samuel Hardwick, dead and buried before she ever met him. She should feel something more than simple relief, should not she? But all she felt was a guilty gratitude that she had been spared whatever kind of marriage that would have been. Then she thought about Nathan Zimmerman, with his storm cloud eyes and his honest face and his surprising proposal. She had been prepared to marry a stranger for security. Was working as a housekeeper for a different stranger really so different? Except Nathan did not feel entirely like a stranger. There had been something in the way he looked at her, something careful and respectful, but also interested. And if Zara was being completely honest with herself, she found him interesting too. He was handsome in a way the Boston men of her acquaintance had never been, rougher, more real somehow, without the polished veneer of society manners. But that was a dangerous line of thinking. She was his employee now, nothing more. She would keep his house, earn her wages, and maintain strict propriety. Whatever tiny flutter of attraction she might feel was irrelevant and would remain firmly suppressed. With that resolution firmly in mind, Zara finally drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Zara woke to the sound of Nathan moving about the main room. Sunlight streamed through her window, and she realized with some embarrassment that she had slept quite late. Quickly, she dressed in another of the simple dresses from Mrs. Zimmerman's chest, twisted her long dark hair into a practical knot, and emerged from her room. Nathan was already gone, but he had left the fire burning and water heating on the stove. A note on the table read, "Morning chores, back by 8, help yourself to anything." Zara smiled at the simple courtesy and set about making breakfast. By the time Nathan returned, stamping dirt from his boots at the door, she had eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits waiting. "You are going to spoil me," he said, washing his hands in the basin. That is rather the point of hiring a housekeeper. They fell into an easy routine over the following days. Nathan worked the ranch mending fences, tending horses, managing the small herd of cattle that grazed his land. Zara attacked the house with determination, cleaning room by room, washing curtains and linens, organizing the pantry and kitchen. True to his word, Nathan took her to Unionville on the third day. The town was small, perhaps 30 buildings clustered along a main street, with a church at one end and a saloon at the other. The general store was well stocked, and the proprietor, a friendly man named Mr. Gibson, showed no surprise when Nathan introduced Zara as his new housekeeper. "About time you got some help out there," Mr. Gibson said cheerfully. "Your mother, God rest her, kept that place running smooth as silk. Been a mess since she passed, I would wager." "That is a kind assessment," Nathan said dryly. Zara selected supplies carefully, conscious of cost, but choosing enough to prepare decent, varied meals. Nathan added a few items she had not selected: a tin of peaches, a small bag of peppermint candies, a package of needles and thread. "For mending," he explained when she looked at him questioningly. "I know you said some of the linens need repair." It was a thoughtful gesture, and Zara found herself touched by his consideration. As they loaded the supplies into the wagon, a woman approached. She was perhaps 40, well dressed in the manner of someone with means, and she studied Zara with undisguised curiosity. "Nathan Zimmerman," she said warmly. "How lovely to see you. And who is this?" "Mrs. Patterson. This is Miss Zara Everly. She has recently come from Boston and is working as my housekeeper. Zara, Mrs. Patterson is married to the banker here in town." "How do you do?" Zara said politely. Mrs. Patterson's eyes gleamed with speculation. "From Boston, how exotic. And what brings you all the way to Wyoming, my dear?" It was a loaded question, and both Zara and Nathan knew it. The wrong answer would set tongues wagging immediately. "I came west seeking a fresh start," Zara said smoothly. "The city did not agree with me. I find the open spaces here much more appealing." "And you happened to find employment with Nathan. How fortunate." "Very fortunate," Zara agreed, refusing to be baited. "Mr. Zimmerman has been extremely gracious, and I find the work quite satisfying." Nathan placed a hand at the small of Zara's back, a gesture that was both protective and possessive, though she doubted he realized it. "We should be heading back, Mrs. Patterson. Long ride ahead." Of course, of course. Perhaps Miss Everly would like to join us for the ladies' social next week." "We meet every Thursday at the church." Zara recognized a test when she heard one. Refusing would make her seem standoffish or ashamed. Accepting would subject her to the scrutiny of every woman in Unionville. "That sounds lovely," she said with a warm smile. "I would be delighted to attend." "Wonderful. I will look forward to it. Good day, Nathan, Miss Everly." As they drove the wagon out of town, Nathan glanced at her. "You do not have to go to that social. Mrs. Patterson is the biggest gossip in 3 counties." "Which is precisely why I must go," Zara replied. "If I hide at the ranch, people will assume the worst. If I attend church functions and social gatherings, I become less interesting. Just another woman doing honest work. Nathan's expression was admiring. You are clever. I am practical. There is a difference. I think you are both. The compliment, simple and sincere, warmed her more than it should have. Zara reminded herself sternly that Nathan was her employer, nothing more. But it was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore the way her heart sped up when he smiled, or how safe she felt when he was near. As spring deepened into summer, life at the Nelson Ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Zara proved to be an excellent housekeeper and a resourceful cook. She mended Nathan's clothes with neat, sturdy stitches. She planted a kitchen garden behind the house, coaxing vegetables from the Wyoming soil with surprising success. She attended the Thursday socials and Sunday services in Unionville, slowly building a reputation as a respectable, hard-working woman. Nathan found himself watching for her throughout the day, the way she hummed while kneading bread, the satisfied expression when she completed a particularly difficult repair, the joy on her face when the first green shoots appeared in her garden. He began timing his return from morning chores to coincide with breakfast, and he lingered over supper in the evenings, finding excuses to extend their conversations. They talked about everything. Nathan told her about growing up on the ranch, about his parents' deep love for each other, about his dreams of building the Nelson spread into something substantial. Zara, more cautiously, shared pieces of her life in Boston, her education, her love of books, eventually even the scandal that had driven her west. He used your name without your knowledge. Nathan's voice was tight with anger when she finally told him the full story. And your family blamed you. They wanted to believe I was innocent, Zara said quietly. They were sitting on the porch after supper watching the sun set. But the doubt was always there. Where there is smoke, there is fire, as they say. It was easier for everyone if I simply disappeared. Their loss, Nathan said firmly. You are worth 10 of anyone who would judge you for something you did not do. Zara looked at him, something warm and frightening blooming in her chest. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever met. I know you are kind to the horses and patient with my terrible housekeeping. I know you are honest and intelligent and brave enough to build a new life in a place completely foreign to you. He met her eyes, and the intensity there made her breath catch. I know you are remarkable, Zara Everly. For a long moment they simply looked at each other. The air between them felt charged, electric, full of possibilities neither dared voice. Then Zara stood abruptly. I should go to bed. Tomorrow is wash day and it will be a long one. Zara, good night, Nathan. She fled to her room, heart pounding. This was dangerous. She was falling for him, had probably been falling for him since that first day when he had offered her sanctuary with no expectations beyond honest work. But what could come of it? She was his employee. He had never suggested wanting more. And even if he did, Zara was terrified of being hurt again, of trusting someone who might ultimately disappoint her. But Nathan was not Tobias. Nathan had never been anything but honest and kind and respectful. Nathan looked at her like she hung the moon, even when she was covered in flour or garden dirt. Nathan, in his own room, was having similar thoughts. He had not meant to say so much, had not meant to reveal how much he had come to care for her. But the words had spilled out, honest and unpolished, and now he could not take them back. He wanted her, not just as a housekeeper, but as a partner, a companion, a wife. He wanted to wake up next to her every morning and fall asleep beside her every night. He wanted to build a life with her, to see her garden grow, to fill the house with children who had her intelligence and his stubbornness. But she had been through so much. The last thing she needed was her employer declaring feelings she might not return, creating an uncomfortable situation in the one place she had found safety. He would have to be patient. He would have to wait for the right moment, if that moment ever came. July arrived with scorching heat that baked the prairie and sent everyone seeking shade. Zara had just finished hanging laundry when Nathan rode up to the house at a gallop, his face grim. "What is wrong?" she asked immediately. "Storm coming. A bad one." He was already dismounting, moving fast. "I need to get the horses into the barn and secure everything. We probably have an hour, maybe less." Zara had heard about prairie storms, their sudden violence and destructive power. "What can I do?" "Get everything inside the laundry, the tools, anything loose. Board up the windows if you can manage it. Boards are in the barn. I need to move the cattle to the sheltered valley." They both moved quickly. Zara had never boarded windows before, but she figured it out through trial and error, hammering the boards in place with shaking hands. The sky had turned a sickly greenish color and the air felt heavy, oppressive. Nathan returned as she was securing the last window. "Inside. Now." They barely made it through the door before the storm hit. Wind screamed around the house, rattling the boards, seeking entry. Rain came in horizontal sheets, pounding against the walls. Thunder crashed so loud it shook the foundations. Zara found herself pressed against Nathan in the center of the room, his arms around her protectively as the storm raged. She could feel his heart beating, strong and steady, beneath her cheek. "The house will hold," he said in her ear, having to shout over the wind. "My father built it to last." She nodded, trusting him, trusting the strength of the walls around them. The storm lasted 3 hours. When it finally passed and they cautiously unboarded the windows, the world outside was transformed. Trees were down. Part of the barn roof had torn away. Debris littered the yard. But the house had held solid and true, just as Nathan had promised. "I need to check on the livestock," Nathan said, already heading for the door. "I am coming with you." "Zara, I am coming." They worked side by side through the evening, securing animals, assessing damage, beginning the cleanup. Nathan's shirt tore on a piece of twisted metal, and Zara bandaged a cut on his shoulder with strips of cloth torn from an old sheet. They were both exhausted, covered in mud, soaked to the skin. "We make a good team," Nathan said as they finally stumbled back to the house well after dark. "Yes," Zara agreed softly. "We do." Something had shifted between them during the storm. Some barrier had fallen. Nathan felt it, and he knew Zara felt it too, from the way she looked at him, from how she had not pulled away when their hands accidentally touched. They cleaned up as best they could and shared a simple meal of bread and cheese, too tired for anything more elaborate. When Zara rose to go to her room, Nathan caught her hand. "Zara, wait." She turned, and the lamplight caught in her dark hair, illuminating her face. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was real and brave and everything he wanted. "I need to tell you something," Nathan said. "And I know the timing is probably terrible, and you can tell me to mind my own business if you want. But today, during the storm, all I could think was that if something happened, if I did not get another chance, I would regret not telling you." "Telling me what?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "That I have feelings for you, strong feelings, that you are not just my housekeeper. You are my friend, my companion, my partner in everything. You make this house a home. You make my days better just by being in them." He took a breath. "I am falling in love with you, Zara. Maybe I have been since the day I saw you standing in my yard, looking like you belonged there." Zara's eyes were wide, her lips parted in surprise. "Nathan, you do not have to say anything," he rushed on. "I know I am your employer, and I know that creates complications. I am not trying to make you uncomfortable. If you want to keep things as they are, we can. I just needed you to know." I needed you to know that when I look at you, I see my future. I see everything I want." For a long moment, Zara simply stood there, tears gathering in her eyes. Then she stepped forward and cupped his face in her hands. "I am falling in love with you too," she whispered. "I have been fighting it because I was afraid, because I did not want to be hurt again, because this all seemed too good to be real. But Nathan, you are real. This is real, and I do not want to fight it anymore." He kissed her then, tender and careful, his hands gentle on her waist. It was a kiss full of promise, of possibility, of a future they would build together. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me." Zara laughed, a sound of pure joy. "That was fast. We have been living together for 3 months. I know everything important about you. I know you sing when you cook, and that you hate doing laundry but love tending the garden. I know you are brave and strong and kind. I know I want to spend every day for the rest of my life with you. So yes, marry me, please." "Yes," Zara said, kissing him again. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 3 weeks later at the Unionville Presbyterian Church, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Mrs. Patterson cried into her handkerchief and took credit for the match, claiming she had known from the moment she saw them together that they were meant to be. Zara wore a simple dress of pale blue that she had made herself from fabric Nathan had surprised her with. Nathan wore his Sunday best and could not stop grinning throughout the entire ceremony. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan kissed her with such enthusiasm that the congregation broke into spontaneous applause. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food contributed by neighbors. Mr. Gibson brought his fiddle, and there was dancing until well after dark. Zara was spun from partner to partner, but Nathan kept cutting in, unwilling to be separated from his bride for more than a few minutes. When the guests finally departed and they were alone, Nathan carried Zara over the threshold of their home, no longer his ranch, but theirs together. That night, as they lay together in Nathan's bed, their bed now, Zara traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "That day when you told me to stay here instead of taking me to the Hardwick Ranch?" "Not for 1 second," Nathan said, pulling her closer. "Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me." "The stagecoach driver made a mistake," Zara mused. "Route 2 instead of Route 12. Such a small thing to change the course of a life." "Maybe it was not a mistake," Nathan said. "Maybe you were meant to end up here, with me." Zara smiled against his chest. "I like to think so." Their first year of marriage was one of discovery and joy. They learned each other's rhythms, how to work together, how to weather disagreements with respect and communication. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Nathan's herd grew, and Zara's garden expanded into a substantial operation that provided not only for their table but extra produce to sell in town. They attended church socials and hosted occasional gatherings for their neighbors. Zara became known as one of the finest cooks in the county, and Nathan's reputation as an honest, hard-working rancher only grew. Together, they formed friendships and built a place for themselves in the community. But their greatest joy came the following spring when Zara discovered she was pregnant. Nathan was beside himself with excitement and worry. He hovered over Zara constantly, until she finally had to remind him that pregnancy was natural, not an illness. "I just want you to be safe," he said, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Both of you, we will be," Zara assured him. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." Nevertheless, Nathan insisted on bringing a doctor from Cheyenne to attend the birth. Dr. Williams was a competent man with a kind manner, and he agreed to stay in Unionville for the final weeks of Zara's pregnancy. Their son was born on a cold December morning in 1877, after 12 hours of labor that Nathan spent pacing the main room, convinced every cry from the bedroom meant disaster. When Dr. Williams finally emerged holding a squalling, red-faced infant, Nathan nearly collapsed with relief. "You have a healthy boy," the doctor announced with a smile, "and your wife is doing fine. She is asking for you." Nathan entered the bedroom to find Zara propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, their son in her arms. The baby had quieted and was looking around with unfocused blue eyes. "Nathan, meet your son," Zara said softly. Nathan sat carefully on the edge of the bed, afraid to breathe too hard, afraid he might break this perfect moment. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. I cannot believe he is really ours." "What should we name him?" Zara asked. They had discussed names endlessly but never quite settled on one. Now, looking at his son's tiny face, Nathan knew. "James," he said. "After my father, James Nelson Zimmerman." Zara smiled. "James, I like that. Hello, James. Welcome to the world, little one." James Zimmerman was a healthy baby with strong lungs and an appetite to match. Nathan proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with James at night so Zara could rest, making silly faces to provoke those first precious smiles, teaching him to ride almost before he could walk. 2 years later, their daughter was born, Emily, named for Zara's grandmother. She had Zara's dark hair and Nathan's gray eyes, and she wrapped her father around her little finger from day one. Life was full and busy, and sometimes exhausting. The ranch continued to grow, requiring hired help during busy seasons. The house expanded with an added wing to accommodate their growing family. Zara's garden became something of a local wonder, producing vegetables and flowers that seemed to thrive despite Wyoming's challenging climate. But through it all, through the hard work and sleepless nights and inevitable challenges, Nathan and Zara remained each other's anchor. Every evening after the children were asleep, they would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, hands clasped, shoulders touching. "Do you ever miss Boston?" Nathan asked one such evening when James was 5 and Emily was 3. Zara considered the question seriously. "I miss some things, the libraries, the theaters, the ocean." She turned to look at him, and her eyes were soft with love. "But I would not trade this life for anything. This ranch, these children, you are everything I never knew I needed." "Even though you ended up at the wrong ranch," Nathan teased gently, "especially because I ended up at the wrong ranch." Zara kissed him softly. "The stagecoach brought me exactly where I was supposed to be." When James was 7 and Emily was 5, a third child arrived, another boy they named Thomas, who proved to be the most mischievous of the three. And 2 years after that, their youngest, Sarah, completed their family. The years passed in the way years do on a working ranch, marked by seasons and harvests, by births and losses, by the steady accumulation of days well lived. Nathan's hair gained silver at the temples. Zara's hands bore the marks of hard work, but the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it deepened, maturing into something richer and more complex than those first bright days of courtship. Their children grew strong and healthy, learning the rhythms of ranch life, attending the schoolhouse in Unionville, helping with chores appropriate to their ages. James inherited his father's way with horses. Emily had her mother's gift with growing things. Thomas was the daredevil, always climbing higher and running faster than was strictly safe. And Sarah, the baby, was content to follow her older siblings on their adventures. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Zara with a trip to Denver. They left the children in the care of a trusted neighbor and spent a week in the city, attending concerts and dining in restaurants, and behaving like the young couple they had once been. "This is wonderful," Zara said as they strolled through the city's botanical gardens. "But I find myself missing the ranch." "As do I," Nathan admitted. "Strange, is it not, to long for home even while enjoying ourselves here? Not strange at all. We built something good, Nathan. Something worth missing." They returned to the ranch to find everything in order and their children ecstatic to see them. That night, lying in their own bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the Wyoming night, Nathan pulled Zara close. "You remember the day we met?" he asked. "You standing in my yard, looking lost and determined all at once." "I was terrified," Zara admitted. "My whole life had fallen apart, and I had no idea what was going to happen next. And then I asked you to stay. And I said yes, even though it was crazy and impulsive and not at all what a sensible Boston lady should do." Nathan chuckled. "Thank God you were not too sensible. Thank God you were bold enough to ask." They fell silent, comfortable in each other's presence in the way only long married couples can be. Outside, an owl hooted. Somewhere in the house, one of the children coughed in their sleep. The ranch settled around them, solid and permanent. "Nathan," Zara's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes, love. I am glad the stagecoach driver made a mistake that day. I am glad he brought me to Route 2 instead of Route 12. Nathan kissed the top of her head. "So am I. Every single day I am grateful for that mistake." They drifted off to sleep, hands clasped, hearts content, secure in the life they had built together from one chance meeting and a simple invitation to stay. The children grew and eventually began lives of their own. James married the daughter of a neighboring rancher and started his own spread just over the ridge from the Nelson place. Emily wed the schoolteacher in Unionville, a quiet man who loved books as much as she loved her gardens. Thomas, restless like many young men, headed to Montana to work with cattle there, promising to return. Sarah, their baby, showed no interest in marrying, preferring to stay on the ranch and work alongside her aging parents. "She has your stubbornness," Zara told Nathan as they watched Sarah expertly rope a stray calf. "And your determination," Nathan replied. "God help any man who tries to tell her what to do." By the time Nathan and Zara reached their 30th anniversary, the ranch had become one of the most successful in the region. They had weathered droughts and harsh winters, watched Unionville grow from a frontier town into a proper settlement, and seen Wyoming achieve statehood in 1890. Through it all, they remained partners in every sense of the word. When Nathan's knee began to trouble him, Zara learned to do more of the physical work. When Zara's eyes grew tired from close work, Nathan would read to her in the evenings, his voice steady and soothing. They became fixtures in Unionville, the couple everyone pointed to as an example of a true partnership. Young brides would ask Zara for advice, and she would always tell them the same thing. "Marry your friend. Marry someone who will work beside you, laugh with you, weather the storms with you. Love is important, but friendship is the foundation." On a warm evening in late May of 1906, 30 years to the day since Zara had arrived at the wrong ranch, they sat on their porch watching the sun set. Their grandchildren, 7 at last count, with 2 more on the way, had left after a boisterous anniversary celebration. The house was quiet again, peaceful. 30 years, Zara marveled, her hand in Nathan's. "Where did the time go?" "Into every board of this house," Nathan said. "Into every fence post. Into our children and grandchildren. The time did not go anywhere, Zara. It became everything we built together." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the sky turn from gold to pink to purple. The mountains stood eternal against the horizon, bearing witness to their love as they had for 3 decades. "I would do it all again," Zara said softly. "Every bit of it. The fear, the uncertainty, the hard work. I would do it all again to end up here with you. You would not change anything. Not even the parts that hurt. Zara thought about this. They had endured losses. Nathan's favorite horse had broken a leg and had to be put down. They had lost 2 pregnancies between Emily and Thomas. Zara's brother had written once, years ago, a brief letter informing her that their parents had passed, and she had grieved for the reconciliation that would never happen. Life had not been without pain. No, she said finally. Not even the hard parts. They made us who we are. They taught us what matters. Nathan kissed her temple, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. I love you, Zara Zimmerman. I loved you when you were Zara Everly, standing in my yard with crumpled telegram in your hand. I loved you when you said yes to staying. I loved you on our wedding day and when each of our children was born. I love you now, with your silver hair and your strong hands and your wise heart. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. Tears slipped down Zara's cheeks, but they were happy tears. And I love you, Nathan Zimmerman. You saved me that day, but more than that, you gave me a life worth living. You gave me home. They sat together as the stars came out, one by one, pinpoints of light in the vast Wyoming sky. The ranch was quiet around them, settling into night. Somewhere, a horse whickered softly. The garden rustled in the evening breeze. The house they had filled with love and laughter and life stood solid behind them. It had all started with a mistake, a stagecoach driver's simple error that delivered a bride to the wrong ranch. But it had not been a mistake at all. It had been fate or providence, or simply the kind of beautiful accident that changes everything. The cowboy who found her had said, "Stay here instead," and she had stayed. And in staying, they had built a love story that would echo through generations. A testament to the power of a single choice, a moment of courage, and 2 hearts brave enough to say yes to an uncertain future together. As they finally rose to go inside, Nathan took one last look at the land that had been his birthright and had become their shared legacy. The moonlight silvered the prairie grass. The mountains stood guard in the distance. And somewhere out there, perhaps another stagecoach was making its way through the darkness, carrying someone toward their destiny. Nathan hoped that person would be as lucky as he had been. He hoped they would find their wrong ranch too. Inside the house, Zara was already preparing for bed, humming that same tune she had hummed while kneading bread on that first morning 30 years ago. Nathan stood in the doorway watching her, marveling that this woman was his, that they had built this life together from nothing but hope and hard work and love. "Are you coming to bed?" Zara asked, catching him watching. "Yes," Nathan said, crossing the room to take her hand. "I am exactly where I belong." They climbed into bed together, fitting together as perfectly as they had for 30 years. Outside, the Wyoming night settled over the ranch, peaceful and protective. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new moments to cherish. But tonight, they had everything they needed: each other, their family, their home. The wrong ranch had been exactly the right place all along. Years later, when their children and grandchildren would gather and ask about how Nathan and Zara met, the story would always begin the same way. Your grandmother arrived at the wrong ranch, and your grandfather, wise man that he was, told her to stay anyway. And the children would laugh and ask, but what if she had gone to the right ranch? What if she had married that other man? And whoever was telling the story would smile and say, but she did go to the right ranch, you see. She just did not know it yet. Sometimes the best things in life come from taking the wrong turn and being brave enough to stay when you get there. The Nelson Ranch prospered long after Nathan and Zara were gone, passed down through generations of children who had learned from their example what it meant to build a life together, to work hard, to love deeply. and to never underestimate the power of saying yes to unexpected opportunities. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered through the Wyoming grass and the sun set behind the mountains, you could almost hear the echo of that long-ago conversation, a cowboy offering sanctuary, a woman brave enough to accept it, and the love story that grew from a simple mistake and an even simpler invitation. Stay here instead. 2 words that changed everything. 2 words that built a legacy. 2 words that proved sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you were always meant to be. The end.